Today is August the 2nd, 2005. My name is Tommy Pike, and I'm president of the Route 66 Association of Missouri. And Jerry Benner is here today with us doing the technician part. And today we're going to interview Frank Martin in Joplin, Missouri. And we will find out some of his experiences growing up and working along Route 66. Frank, where were you born and when?
I was born on June the 10th, 1916 at 708 West Broadway in Webb City. And Broadway is the street that Route 66 ran down when it was originally put in, ran right in front of my house. And at that time, although I don't distinctly remember it, it was a gravel road. It was paved a little bit down the center. At the time I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I lived on that till I got out of high school, well, until I got married in 1938. When I was 22, I moved off of Broadway. But it was still Route 66 at that time.
What did your dad do for a living there in Webb City?
My dad was working in a grocery store for a man that had two neighborhood grocery stores. His name was Fred Crutcher. My dad ran the one at 4th and Hall Street in Webb City, and Mr. Crutcher ran the one down in the north part of Webb City. Later on, my dad started his own grocery store at 4th and Ornogo, and in later years, 66 was running on MacArthur Drive, which was actually 4th Street at one time in Webb City. My mother died when I was 5, but her sister raised me. She raised me and my two brothers from the time I was 5. The next brother was 12, and the other one was 14 when my mother passed away. But we just moved from one house from 708 to 710 when we moved in with my aunt and my grandfather.
You said back then that the street wasn't really paved then. Was a lot of it in that area still dirt roads?
Oh, most of it was, yeah. Had more horse and buggies than we did cars. A few Model Ts and the old-fashioned Chevrolets. Webb City was a mining town, and when I was just about getting into the teens, the mines moved to Pitcher, and Webb City went to pot. But it did come back without the mines. Nice little town.
After you graduated from high school, what did you do?
I took over my dad's farm. He was trying to look after a farm and the grocery store too. And so I took over the farming part of it for, I guess I was farming on South Hall Street, which is Duquesne Road, until about 1951. Then I went to work mostly in insurance businesses of different kinds. I started the only pasteurizing plant in Webb City. It was all raw milk and pasteurized and homogenized milk from a creamery in Joplin, and I started a pasteurizing plant in Webb City in 1946 and sold out to Medigold Beatrice Creamery in 1951. And after that, I sold fertilizer, chemical fertilizer for Darling Company out of St. Louis. They later put a plant in Webb City. Worked for them until about 1970, I guess. Then I got into insurance and insurance adjusting and liked it very well, but one of my best customers was Tri-State Motor Transit, and their claims manager, I'd been settling a lot of claims, outside claims for him. He decided to retire, and so I applied for the job as claims manager out there and got it and settled the claims for them. Not the products, not the what we were hauling, but the trucks and the liabilities on them and collision and all that. And I retired in 1982.
Was you working for Tri-States when the truck exploded up there on the interstate?
I went to work for them. Well, I was settling. I worked on that claim some, but I was working for a claim company out of Kansas City at that time, and I went to work for them. I think that's all the troubles of that incident, I think, was what caused the claim manager to retire out there, so I got his job because it was very complicated. You were bucking the whole Teamster union, and it was a job, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I remember that incident. I believe that was in 69 or 70.
Yeah, I went to work for them in 70. I mean, for them direct in 70, it was the last part of 69. It's a very tragic incident.
Yeah, I know that was the talk of the area for quite some time. When you were settling claims, did you have to settle several, I guess, for accidents along 66 through this area? And
quite a few, yeah. Of course, by that time, 66 came in on 7th, right by the side of Tri-State out there in Dunaway.
Yeah, that was from the interstate coming through while they moved 66 44 business out there where it come in on the east side and came down 7th Street to Range Line in there.
The original 66, if I remember right, came out of Carthage out to 2 or 3 little settlements, one some kind of heights and different ones, and then through the little Lakeside Park, and then in from the north into Carterville and down Main Street in Carterville, across the railroad tracks, in on Doherty Street, and then transferred over to Broadway in Webb City, and went that straight on west on Broadway out in front of my house, and down to originally Jefferson Street, and out south on Jefferson to about 16th, and then over to Madison Street, and Madison out to Oakland Corner, and then west from Oakland Corner on through Royal Heights and into Joplin. Let's see, can't remember.
First came down down what is Range Line now to Zora Street.
Yeah, that's what it was. Couldn't
and went
remember.
West at Zora.
Yeah, went west on Zora through Royal Heights and into the east part of Joplin there.
And then came in there on the north part of Main Street and down Main to West 7th
yeah,
and out.
And then went West 7th out through to Galena.
Yeah, past Schiffer-Decker Park and all in there. And this area, this whole area, one of the biggest businesses was mining back then.
Back in those days, the whole area was, yeah. Galena was a mining town. And Baxter Springs was a little bit mining, not quite as much as Pitcher and some of the rest of them down there. One of the most interesting things I remember partly of was a trans-United States marathon race. I can't remember the name of the people that put the race on. You probably
the Bunion Derby.
Bunion, I believe that was right. And all the runners came right down Broadway. They ran so many miles a day, and they'd put them up, and they ran from, I think, from Chicago to Los Angeles.
You saw that when you was.
I was a little kid, and I sat out in the front yard and watched them all go by. We had quite a few neighbor kids, and some of the runners would stop and talk to us. And we got quite a kick out of it.
Of course, back then that was what people did. They watched things like that to entertain themselves. Didn't have television, and radio was.
No, talk to the neighbors then even.
That was in the Depression, right?
Before the Depression. Depression didn't really start till about 32, I guess.
Yeah, stock market crashed in 29.
Yeah.
And then.
End of the year, yeah.
And the Bunion Derby, I believe, was in 28, I believe. 7.
That'd be about right. It'd be about 28. I was about 10 or 12 years old.
Pretty good sized kid then.
Families were a little different then. I remember in the one block, the 700 block of Broadway, people living in every house on both sides of the street. But we had over 20 kids from 6 years old up to 15 or 18 get out in the street and play, and had a lot of fun. Didn't have any TVs or anything like that.
Didn't even have radio at that point.
No. The first radio I remember was a battery-operated set that must have had at least 12 batteries in it, large car-sized batteries. And part of them would be down all the time. You'd have to be charging batteries to have enough to run your radio.
And like to hear a radio station, where was then what would have been the closest radio station?
We had one in Joplin. I think it was WMBH. And it was a fairly weak station. Had a real strong station out of Tulsa and a pretty strong one out of Springfield, so we could get to 3 stations.
What do you remember listening to?
Oh, when I was in high school, my favorite musical program was Bob Wills, playing off out of the Tulsa station. And
Ma Perkins.
yeah. And Fibber McGee and Molly, and Bob Hope, when he first started. I remember him on radio. Red Skelton.
What was the effect of the Depression when it kind of came in down here?
Oh, the Depression, it bothered us pretty bad because the grocery store my dad was running for Mr. Crutcher went out of business. He closed it up. And my dad was unemployed and he refused to take relief. So he did odd jobs and everything until he finally borrowed $300 on his life insurance and bought an old ran down grocery building down on 4th and Orinoco. And in between what jobs he could get, he fixed it up and started his own grocery store down there, and he was very successful after that. But we went through about 3 years that we really didn't know where the next meal was coming from, but I don't ever remember missing a meal.
We had victory gardens.
Yeah, we had gardens and butchered a couple of hogs that we raised in the backyard there on Broadway, and we had groceries on the table every meal.
I believe he was telling us that when you had the pasteurizing plant and everything, that you provided milk for the school kids.
Yeah, That's when I met her.
What was it, a half a pint of milk?
Half pint of milk.
What was a half pint of milk worth back then?
Delivered to the school and everything, 3 cents a bottle.
3 cents a bottle. And then you go back.
Larger bottles, quart size, you could buy for a nickel.
And then you'd pick the bottles up and
Pick the bottles up when I left the crates of new ones and pick them up the next day and leave some more.
take them back and wash them and
Yeah.
clean them and
Yeah,
fill
refill
them.
them.
Things have changed quite a bit,
Haven't they though? It changes why I got out of the dairy business, because it was all in glass bottles then, which you could wash and use again. And then the bigger dairies came out with paper cartons, and everybody went wild over paper cartons. So I thought, well, that's what I'm going to have to do. So I investigated it, and to change the equipment and buy the new equipment to handle paper cartons would cost about $20,000. And my whole dairy wasn't worth over $6,000 or $7,000. So I started the pasteurizing plant, and then Medigold, which was a large dairy, was going to move into Joplin and start routes in Webb City and everything. So I went to Mr. Carr, who was the district manager of it, and I said, now look, I'm not silly enough to know that I can keep you out or compete with you or anything, but I can sure make you lose money for 3 or 4 years till you get rid of me. So why don't we get together on a purchase price and you just buy me out and have established route in Webb City. He thought it was a good idea, so they bought me out.
Did you ever have a door-to-door delivery?
Yeah.
Delivered to the door and
Yeah. And the interesting part, back in those days, people didn't lock their houses. Once a week, they'd leave the amount of money on the kitchen table that they owed me for milk for the week. I'd go in the house and put the milk in the refrigerator for them. They'd leave a note. They'd pay me once a week and just leave the money out on the table. Neighbors going in and out and everything. We never did lose a nickel.
that'd kind of be hard in this day and time, would
I don't believe you could do it. And I don't know just when it changed. It changed gradually.
I don't guess anybody does door-to-door milk delivery anymore.
Not that I know of.
That was one of the things that went away and nobody really realized it happened until it was gone.
Well, the stores just started selling milk.
Yeah.
And you went to the store and bought your milk.
Well, they delivered bakery products, and the cleaning came in. Cleaners
Yeah.
came in, took a call.
Cleaning door, house to house delivery on your cleaning. Come pick it up and take it in and clean it and bring it back.
Not anymore.
No,
They don't deliver ice either.
no.
Of course, I believe probably what did away with a lot of the cleaning was the wash and wear
Yeah.
thing, and
Yeah.
now then most stuff you don't even iron it anymore. So that technology has stepped in and done away. Although they're cleaning now, there are several things that you buy that has to be dry cleaned, more so than probably 10 years ago,
Yeah.
or 15. And some of the stuff that goes away comes back eventually, like
Right.
you buy like wool clothes and such as that now, that there's not so much synthetic stuff like double knit and such as that.
I know when wash and wear first came in, my wife was working and trying to run the house too, although we just had one child. But she said if it had to be ironed, she wasn't going to buy it. We didn't wear any clothes that needed to be ironed for 6 or 8 years there. They begin to force you to again.
You was talking about your son. Does he live in the area here?
No, he lives in Davenport, Iowa. He's retired now, so he's spending more time in Florida right now because that's where his 2 grandchildren live. But they're moving to Des Moines, Iowa, so that's going to be a lot closer to him.
A lot colder in the winter.
Oh yeah, oh, that Davenport, Iowa gets about as cold as any place, right on the Mississippi River. And 8 and 10 below zero is not uncommon there at all. There's always a wind.
Won't have an excuse to go to Florida now.
No, I think I kind of miss that.
You was talking about the insurance business. It's changed quite a bit from what it used to. You was talking about settling claims. Probably in the beginning you didn't see as many lawsuits and stuff like that
No,
as you
no.
do in this
It was an
day.
unusual case that would be settled in court. By the time I was started working at Tri-State out there, it was beginning to change. Lawsuits were getting to be pretty common in the early 70s, and now then in small claims courts and all, they $200 accidents get into court every once in a while.
There aren't any $200 accidents.
Well, not hard to. No.
No, if you back up and hit a post, it's more than $200.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Probably closer to 2,000 than 200.
That's about right. The way the car repairs are now.
Yeah, everything is considerably higher than it used to be. You was talking about the grocery store. Do you remember any like prices of things?
Oh, nickel loaves of bread. And when sliced bread came on the market, which my dad refused to buy for a while because he said people got too lazy to slice their own bread, they didn't need it.
Well, that's, you know, we even now see change, and then you hear things like that. People's never accepted change gracefully.
No,
That's for sure.
no.
It's something hard to accept to change from a way you've done something for years and years.
I'm sure anytime you traveled anywhere, you obviously started out on Route 66.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember traveling any places on 66?
Shortly after my wife and I were married, which was 1938, her mother moved to California, and my wife went out every year on the bus or train, but I never got to go out because I had the dairy and all. So I guess it was about 1950, but we went to California almost every year, every summer. Drove to California, most of it on 66.
Across the desert?
Yeah, oh yeah. And no air conditioning cars then either.
Traveling early morning or late at night?
Yeah, the windows down, and sometimes it got so hot you put the windows up because keep the heat out.
Water bag on front?
Yeah,
And then the ones that drip the water out the window.
yeah.
Yeah, little window evaporator cooler, and put water or maybe even ice and all in them, and pull the string and the cylinder to turn. And
I've been looking for one of those. They're hard to find.
They're pretty much in demand now, these people that are rebuilding, redoing the old cars. And they're hard to come by. They're pretty high.
one that's still in good shape is hard to find.
Yeah.
The things like that are, people buy them, and you was talking about the canvas bags on the front. When you find them anymore, they're extremely expensive if it's an actual old one. I'm sure that when they made them, they never figured that they'd be worth $30 to $40, $50 a piece.
Huh.
Well, they kind of died out when they took hood ornaments off the front of the car.
Yeah,
Didn't have a place to hang.
Hang it.
that's right.
And some of these new ones, a 2-gallon bag of water might jerk the whole front end off of it.
That sure could be.
But yeah, do you remember, you was talking about radio, you remember the first TVs and stuff down here in the area?
Just, yeah, I do. It's, don't remember dates well, but it seems to me like it's either late 40s or real early 50s. First one I ever saw. We didn't own one until about the middle 50s. You used to go out to you and your husband's house to watch TV because you had one of the first ones. And I remember the first one you got was so reliable that you could set the TV on that side of the room, set a mirror on this side, and you'd sit right beside of the TV and look in the mirror because it eliminated a lot of the snow and everything through the mirror. You know, I always thought if somebody stepped up to the front door and saw us all four sitting there beside of the TV, looking down here in the mirror, they'd think we was crazy, but it worked.
The TV station here in Joplin came in, what, in about the mid-50s?
Yeah. I believe the one at Pittsburgh, in between Pittsburgh and Joplin, was the first one in this district. They talk about things being higher now. The first TV we got was not a great big one, and it was almost $300, and it was hard to get $300, and it's about like one that sells for $100 now.
And $100 is worth a lot less money.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I remember the first one my folks bought, there wasn't a station in Springfield at that time, and everybody had an antenna on the house.
Oh, yeah.
And we watched Channel 4 out of Kansas City, and the first TV, they give over $500 for it.
Yeah.
And then they opened a station in Springfield. I remember on TV stations didn't come on all day, and people would turn their TVs on and sit and watch the test pattern.
Yeah.
Well, in St. Louis County, you didn't put an antenna on the roof. You put it in the attic, because when they'd come around every 10 years to reassess property values, they saw a TV antenna, you got charged like $5 for owning the TV set.
Oh.
But if they didn't see an antenna, and you didn't let them in the house, they didn't know you had a TV. So I'm certain my mom went around and did that, you know, would do the assessment, and that was what you did. You looked on the roof, see if they had
You mean people lied on their taxes back then? Even?
Yeah. Well, no, they just didn't let you know what was going on.
Some things were sacred back then.
That's right.
The life was a little simpler back then.
Yeah.
Seemed hectic at the time, I guess, but wasn't faced with some of the problems and issues that we face now.
Well, a TV set back then was like an automobile. It was a substantial investment. Now it's
Yeah.
getting to be substantial again with these new ones, but
Something else that I remember back when I was younger, our son was a baby and I had the dairy. We had a real good doctor, and she knew him, Dr. Gregory. I delivered milk to these, at that time he was single and living with these folks. I delivered milk to their house. I remember they took 2 quarts of milk every day and a half pint of what we call coffee cream at that time. And he would, if our baby was sick, we'd call him, he'd come out the house to take care of it. And there was never any money exchanged hands between the two of us. we'd owe him quite a bit for a while, and we'd all be healthy and we'd get caught up and get ahead of the doctor. But actual money, we never exchanged any money for years there. And he was a good doctor. When she first got diabetics over 50 years ago, she'd been to every doctor in Joplin, I think, and none of them ever even suspected diabetics had they. And she was working at the old Jane Shin Hospital. Dr. Gregory was doctoring out there, and he came in one day and asked the other girl, and said, would you take Nadine over and get a test ran? She's got diabetics. And she says, yeah, I'll take her over. Nadine said, yeah, I'll go. And sure enough, he was right. She had diabetics and had it bad. But nobody had caught it except he was in and out of the office, and she was drinking lots of Cokes and a lot of the characteristics, and he just picked it up from being in the office, never examined her at all. So he'd already diagnosed as diabetics. He was quite a guy.
He was an osteopath, and he didn't want to tread onto the medical doctors. He knew I was.
Well, osteopaths weren't accepted too well back then.
Now they're all mixed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, work right in the same hospitals together.
Yeah, all my wife's uncles, they were osteopaths because of Kansas City.
Uh-huh.
I went to school there in Kansas City. Yeah.
You was talking about diabetes, and now then they claim it's almost in epidemic proportions, even for young people and everything. And I think probably one of the biggest contributors is people drink so much soda pop.
Now, I bet that's sure right.
But smoking sometimes causes it, and I never heard of that.
No, I hadn't heard of that. But it's one of those health problems, I guess. It comes on people and they don't really realize it until you.
It used to be more of the old elderly people.
But like you was talking about in your neighborhood, there was probably 20 kids in a block, and that they'd get out and play. And the other day I saw a thing on television, they was discussing, they were advising get kids out and let them interact and play, that they don't know how to play with each other, and they become involved with video games on the computer, and they are isolated and they don't know how to interact with each other. And I know when I was a kid, you know, everybody within a 2-block area, and you played and everything.
Carried a pocket full of marbles with you, and you could set up a marble game any place you wanted to.
And
well, that was back when it was cooler outside in the summer than it was inside.
Yeah, now everybody stays in for the air conditioning. In fact, when you was a kid, you could walk down the street and you could tell nearly what everybody's gonna have for dinner because you could smell them cooking as you walked up the street. And now then, all you get's carbon monoxide from the cars that pass you. But you could pretty well tell what everybody was gonna have. And houses was built with front porches. Now they're not.
And people used them.
Yeah. Set out in the evening and
Screened in porches.
Yeah.
Sleep on in the summer.
Any place you can get a breeze.
Yeah, our lifestyles have changed tremendous in the last 50 years especially.
Do we want to switch people?
I guess so. Is there anything else you?
Can't think of anything.
Well,
Quite a bit.
yeah, we
Well, I hope it
appreciate
helped you a little.
the opportunity to talk to you and some background on Webb City and this area in general.
My grandfather was city clerk of Webb City for 33 years. I don't remember the exact years when he started or when he died. He died when I was about 17 years old, so he's He'd been city clerk for 16 years when I was born, I guess. And I bet they change city clerks in Webb City and small towns every 2 years probably anymore. And he had no machines to help him. Everything was written in longhand.
And you could read it.
Yeah,
And understand it.
yeah.
And well, being the city clerk, he was probably in charge of elections, and everybody
Oh yeah, he had
went
a lot
and
to
voted
do.
by hand. And now then, it's all.
I know
If
he had
it
to-
isn't now, it will be by fall. Is all computerized and everything, and
I don't know what he did. I don't remember. I guess I always just assume he's helping count votes and all. But every election day, he didn't come home for supper or anything. He didn't get home till 11:30, 12 o'clock.
had to count the ballots by hand.
Yeah.
Sounds like they need to go back to that in Florida.
Yeah, I believe he did.
Got all the Chad problems.
Yeah.
Wonder about a lot of things, though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Okay. Today is August the 2nd, 2005. My name's Tommy Pike, and I am president of the Route 66 Association of Missouri. And this morning we're interviewing Nadine Shonk. And Jerry Benner is taking care of the technical part and the recording and everything. And we'll visit a little bit with Nadine. If you don't care to, when was you born and where?
April the 12th, 1921, in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
You grew up in the Pittsburgh area.
Went all through school there.
You went to college at the college. And,
Right. Kansas State Teachers it was then.
you was a school teacher.
Uh-huh.
How many years did you teach?
I taught 2 years in rural schools where I made my own fires, did my sweeping, had maybe 6 or 8 grades, sometimes a little more. I had 2 years of that. And my second class was the little brick house that is a home now, but it was a little brick schoolhouse going to Chicken Mary's from here through Office up. And I had just had my second year of teaching, and I was hired at that school. So I would come home at night. I was very disturbed with teaching. I don't know, I just wasn't just real decide. I really didn't know whether I wanted to continue, but anyway, I thought maybe I should, the children I had learned were A students, and I thought I ought to grade them down a little so I wouldn't overgrade them. And when I did, I had the whole school board almost. They were A students, but I went home many evening crying, but with Mom's love, I managed to get through. But it was a lovely school, and I enjoyed it very much. They were great kids. They'd invite me to their home, and had tablecloths with my name written on it, and they'd embroidered those, and it was, the mothers would do that, and but it was nice. And then I taught 10 years in Webb City. But
What?
my husband was coach.
What grades did you teach in what?
Second grade.
Second grade.
Yeah.
Taught second grade for all 10 years.
Yes, I went to the old Eugene Field School. That was my first year, and then there was such a influx of children after the war, Mr. McDonald, who was superintendent there, would come home. My husband would come home every night. You've got to teach, Nadine. I wasn't going to teach, and so he finally convinced me. And that year there was so many children that they had to split the first and second grade, and so I went to Franklin and had to split level there.
How many years did you live there in Webb City?
10.
10?
Mm-hmm. I went to St. Louis in 54.
Lived in St. Louis then for a few years.
23.
Did you teach up there?
No, I worked for Sears Roebuck and Company, which is now nothing.
Where did you live in St. Louis?
Well, we went, I lived in Wellston first because my husband took a job there. And then we went to Hazelwood. And then we went back to, the new area west on Olive Street. What's the name of it now?
Chesterfield.
The new Chesterfield, yeah. And the shopping center there was just beginning to be built. I liked the county in St. Louis.
When did you move back into the Joplin area here?
I've been here about 17 years, when did we come back? My husband died in 89.
About 88.
85, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What did your dad do in the...
He worked for the Kansas City Southern in Pittsburgh. But that, I can remember as a child, he kept a time book. And he'd write the time he had worked. And sometimes he'd get three days a month with 4 kiddies. That's when Frank was saying, we had victory gardens, we had chickens, and we didn't go hungry. We didn't know we were poor. My folks lost their home, and Mr. Weeks, who was a good friend of the folks, the realtor, said, Mr. Sale, if you want to live here, you can rent it for $5 a month, and you won't have to move. And we did. We stayed there until we moved on 14th Street, near my daddy's work. So we had a very happy home life and didn't know we were poor and did lots of fun things.
After you got married, did you travel Route 66 much? Going to St. Louis, I imagine you did.
Oh, yes. But it was in 44, because in 54 it was, it was already 44.
You traveled back and forth then, and then you've been here, you said, since 85 here in the Joplin area. Mm-hmm. Do you have family?
Ray and my husband Ray and I had no children since being diabetic early married life, and so it seemed like most of my children were the school children and my nieces and nephews, and I have some lovely family, but that's my family, and they're all gone now except my nieces and nephews, my brother-in-laws. I have a brother-in-law in North Carolina. He was a postman in Pittsburgh, and he's up there with his son, my nephew. So.
What was it like teaching school there? When you were teaching
in the rural school?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember this year that it was kind of difficult for me. We had the scrap drives for metal. And so I took all the children, got them all in my car, and we went around to the different homes one day to get scrap, because we wanted to do what was right for the war effort. And that was a highlight. It was great.
But there was a one-room school?
Yes. It's the little brick school that's now a home, just about off of 71 north going to Chicken Mary's. It's about, it's probably not 2 miles, is it?
I'd say about a mile and a quarter.
I got curious and I stopped one day coming home from Pittsburgh after I'd been visiting and asked them if I could just step inside, and I did. And they had done a lot of remodeling, but we had a little stage in there, and they had taken it and done it made it into their home. So it was a real joy to see it. But I went to Lakeside School when I was a first grader, and they didn't have kindergarten. And the first teacher I had she said, "You have the same name I have." And I said, "Nadine?" And she said, "Yes, but you don't spell yours with a Y, and I do." But I just thought she was the most marvelous person I'd ever met. And when she'd come to grade my paper, she had a little pin. Her class pin had the little chain on it. And you know, I was so fascinated. I would watch that little chain and admire her more than what I was getting on my paper. But anyway, in the first little school play I was in, she chose me to be Mary in the Christmas play, and Jesus was the little Italian boy from Cristiano Passavento. I'll never forget him. And he was in my class from there clear through high school. And several of the children I graduated with were, and we still get together for reunions. But when she did that, you know, Jesus became alive to me. I loved that little boy anyway. And it was a real experience for me, and I think it changed my life, really.
And then you taught in Webb City?
10 years.
Well, what was that like?
Oh, that was great. As I said, they had double classes the last year that I was there.
The year you had a son.
Oh, 1 year.
You had 2 girls and
all the rest were
all the
boys.
rest were boys.
I had
There was almost 30 in there.
21. And the one little girl got burned. She was a beautiful little blonde, and she had to drop out, so I ended up with one boy. One girl with the room of boys. But they were sweet. They were.
That was a bigger school, though.
Yes. Oh, that was all one grade. But teaching in a rural school in the back, when you had to teach all different grades, you know, I think sometimes the children learned a lot just being in the room where, I mean, if they weren't studying, they were listening. And I don't know, but it always bugged me that we didn't teach finances, even in the first grade, and child care or family, because it seems like today children don't know a thing about money. I don't say a thing, but a lot of them just don't know how to manage it. But I don't know.
Probably in this day and time, we're beginning to live in a moneyless society, in the fact that you don't really use money.
No.
There's a tendency to everybody use credit cards and all, which is convenient and handy, and checks. A lot of places won't take them because they feel like they'll get a bad one. And when you don't handle it in your pocket,
It makes a difference.
and you just stick the plastic card in there, it takes quite a bit of discipline to realize that you can only spend so much. And when you use the plastic, you have a tendency to
Overspend.
spend stuff that you don't have in your pocket.
Right.
And I think that's really the downfall a lot of the younger people now.
I have a little niece who married a boy who is just fascinated with Route 66, and he's a little Louisiana boy, and he's never been up here. And I'd love for him to come, but it just never works out. But if you want a souvenir or anything, I'd always go over to the little store over in Riverton.
Heisler Brothers.
Yes, and you could just go in there and browse, and it's just got all kinds of fascinating things.
That's like going in the old grocery store. You can go in there and get pop or soda out of a case, and you can go back there and buy you a slice of bologna and cheese and have a sandwich and everything. And it's like the neighborhood grocery store used to be.
And on old 66, that's what we did.
Yeah. When you traveled, that's what you do.
You bet.
Go down the road and then eat it. There wasn't Golden Arches or, I guess those neighborhood grocery stores was the closest thing to fast food they had.
Well, you look for City Park.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes there'd be a little roadside.
A tree that had all the shade with it.
Yeah, you'd find a tree, and if you get to looking, there was ruts where other people had pulled off and just wore ruts at the side of the road, and you get out and throw your blanket down and eat your sandwich and drink your soda and head down the road.
Right.
Maybe have some fruit and
Gas stations had 2 pumps,
Right.
ethyl and regular.
Yeah.
And you, like you say, you traveled along and you had the windows down and you smelled the smells and saw the sights as you went along. And now when you travel the interstate, you go under that same bridge for 200 miles. It's across the road at nearly the same angle every place.
You could smell the roses, couldn't you?
Yeah. And now you can get in your car and drive 500 miles and still be breathing the air you left home with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So things is a little different now.
Yeah, right.
The one thing we have now, though, that I would hate to give up is the air conditioning.
Yeah, right. TV, I don't think I can miss too much.
No, television, if it wasn't for news and weather, it would be useless.
We
Right.
don't even have cable. And our TV is never, not very often on before 6 o'clock news at night.
No. Too busy.
Yeah,
You know, when you retire, you think you're going to have a lot of time, but I guess you work a lot slower.
I've found that out. I don't know what the problem is. I haven't figured it out. Maybe as you get older, a job that used to take a day takes you 3 or 4 now.
Yeah.
I do notice that now when you go do anything, instead of 1 trip to the lumber yard or hardware store, it'll require 4 or 5 before you got everything you need.
It seems like you hit snags more than, maybe it's just me.
And used to, you could go in if you needed a couple of bolts and nuts or a couple of screws, why you could get them. And now most of the places you go, you got to buy a whole package.
Yeah, right.
And you end up with a lot of stuff. You probably won't do this job again for a long time. So you seem to acquire a lot of things that you may not ever use again. So it's, you was talking about Pittsburgh. Was it, it had a college and all there? Was it fairly, there was a lot of business and all in Pittsburgh?
Yes. And when we moved, as I said, from Martin Streets, where I lived in the beginning, and when I moved east of town, I wanted to continue to go to high school, go to Lakeside, where I'd been all through my school years. And so the folks said, well, if you want to walk, we can't take you. So my little cousin lived in the country, and she only went to the 8th grade, so she had to go someplace for the 9th. So my daddy said, just like, come and stay with us. So that meant 3 girls, 3 sisters, I mean, my family, and her was 4, and we had 1 bedroom for the girls. So we all slept in the same bed. But oh, did we have fun. But we walked from home to Lakeside, and we lived 14 blocks east on 14th Street. So that was a long ways, but we would stop into places like Kelso's feed store, where my daddy knew them and knew my daddy, and the hardware and the realtors, and we'd stop and get warm so we could make it. But we went. It was fun. But you talk about the Depression. I noticed it more when I was out of high school, and it was still 39, but I wanted to get some jobs to go to college. My dad said he couldn't put us through college, but if we wanted to live at home like we'd been doing, that was perfectly all right. We could make it. So we wanted to get our books. So I looked for jobs, and I tell you, you went everywhere for a job. Finally, I went, Mr. Kelso said to my daddy, well, send her down here, we'll let her weigh seeds. So I went down and worked 2 hours for Mr. Kelso, and then Cherry's Insurance, my daddy did business with them, and she said, well, she was going to have a party if I would help her clean their house. So I said, I'll do anything. So I went out there, and I got along fine, except they had a small child. And she asked me one day when I got through to walk the little girl through Lincoln Park. And I thought, oh, in the baby buggy. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't do that. If I see my friends, they'll think it's mine. And I was very humiliated, and oh gosh, I just didn't want to do that at all. But I did, and she paid me, and then Mr. Weeks' wife said she said I did a good job, would I help her? So I went down the street about 4 houses, and then I cleaned her house. So that's the way I made my way through school. But I was grateful. It didn't hurt me. It was great.
Well, glad you had the opportunity to do that.
You better believe it, because the jobs weren't, you just couldn't find them.
They weren't there, and
No.
the opportunity to even make the money to buy your books was,
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
sure they weren't expensive like they are in this day and time, but back then, $3 or $4 for a book was probably equal to $40 or $50 for a book now. Is there anything else you would like to
I hope
tell
I'm
us?
not bored you too much.
Oh no, this is all interesting
But
and everything. And
you know, say the Lord says there's a blessing in everything, and I think you two are great. I've enjoyed having you in my home.
okay, well, we've enjoyed interviewing you today, and thank you for your time.
You're welcome.